George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, John Quincy Adams, Andrew Jackson, Martin Van Buren, William Harrison, John Tyler, James Polk, Zachary Taylor, Millard Fillmore, Franklin Pierce, James Buchanan, Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Johnson, Ulysses S. Grant, Rutherford B. Hayes, James A. Garfield, Chester Arthur, Grover Cleveland, Benjamin Harrison, Grover Cleveland, William McKinley, Theodore Roosevelt, William Howard Taft, Woodrow Wilson, Warren Harding, Calvin Coolidge, Herbert Hoover, Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, Dwight D. Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Donald Trump.
Imagine America without a president. In 1789, the idea of an American president came true. George Washington was America's first president, who served from 1789 to 1797, and America is still having presidents up to this day. Washington was born on February 22nd, 1732, which is actually President's Day, as a matter of fact. The origins of the presidency. America became a country in 1776, the first year into the American Revolutionary War. After that, America's relations with Britain were still sour, but they became slightly better until the War of 1812, when they came bustling down again. But Britain and the USA have amazing relations today because they are both part of NATO. But they were not like that back in the olden days. So, the origins of the American presidency can actually be traced back to the first year of the American Revolutionary War, 1775, when it began with the battles of Lexington and Concord. The first battle in the war that would change American wars forever. It was the first war that America fought as a country. And all wars after that, it had a huge involvement with, it has the biggest involvements now. Involvements in earlier wars weren't too major, but they still got involved at some points. The Declaration of Independence was signed on July 4th, 1776, by future Presidents John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and one of the most famous founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin. There are also many other delegates during the Declaration of Independence's signing, but we don't have time to mention all of those. So Jefferson, Adams, and Franklin were the three major ones. And America was changed forever up to that point. The Declaration of Independence was written. America was an independent country by that point. And George Washington became America's first president 13 years after the signing. And America would never be at its current state if it weren't for Washington. And also, we have to mention Abraham Lincoln. He freed slavery, and that was a huge turning point in American presidential history. And also, George Washington didn't even want to become king. He hated Britain so much. if you don't know, Britain had a monarchy and still has to this day, with King Charles III as monarch. During the War of 1812, the White House was absolutely destroyed. George Washington setting the precedent. George Washington was America's first president from April 30th, 1789 to March 4th, 1797. April 30th, 1789. That day would change American history forever. America would never be the same without a president. There would be no vice president, no president pro tempore of the Senate, no secretary of state, no secretary of agriculture, etc. America would never be the same without Washington. 2 years prior to becoming president, Washington signed the Constitution with future President James Madison and, once again, one of the most famous founding fathers at the time, Benjamin Franklin. Those were the three major ones: Washington, Madison, and Franklin. We don't have time to mention the rest. Oh wait, we do. Alexander Hamilton, another major founding father, was also there. Don't forget about Hamilton, who shot in 1804 during the presidency of his rival, quote-unquote rival, Thomas Jefferson. They were actually kind of friends, but major rivals. They hated each other's guts during the Washington presidency because they disagreed with each other's political views. And Washington usually sided with Hamilton in these cases. Johnson felt betrayed. But he still liked Washington, even though he sided with Hamilton. Crazy, right? Yeah, Washington was loved by everyone. Well, not everyone, but you know what I mean. Anyways, yeah, America would never be the same without George Washington in power. He fought in the American Revolutionary War to free America, signed the US Constitution, and then became the first president of America. Crazy! Oh, and one more very small note. Washington actually became the 14th Chancellor of the College of William and Mary during his presidency. He is the first of only two presidents to both have been an independent and serve as the Chancellor of the College of William and Mary. The second one for both of those being John Tyler, the 10th President of America, who served from 1841 to 1845, after William Henry Harrison's death on April 4th, 1841. Speaking of John Tyler, nobody at the time knew if the vice president could just be the president after that, or had to serve as acting president before someone else took the complete control. But Tyler went with the first option, taking full control of America, saying, "I'm the president now." Anyways, Tyler was also born under the presidency of George Washington, the others being James K. Polk, his successor, and James Buchanan, Polk's Secretary of State. They were also both presidents, of course, being the 11th and 15th presidents. So, to sum it all up, for the third time, America would never be the same without George Washington in charge. He was the first president and he also had a lot of jobs before his presidency, the first being a small surveyor, next being a part of the forget them. the main focus of his life was in his presidency, of course. But sadly, he didn't sign the Declaration of Independence. Sad news. And all the presidents after him, even Trump, has looked upon him. And he is seen as the second best president in American history, behind only the one and only Abraham Lincoln. The sad bit is George Washington had slaves. It was very common to have slaves for rich people at the time, though, so don't be too surprised. Just feel bad for the slaves. And Washington is the second richest president as of 2026, behind Trump himself. The founding generation. We'll get to that part next time. Adios! Thank you very much for watching part 1 on the entirety of the US presidential history. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. we'll have comedy time with the Country Boys and more fun facts with these presidents. So stay tuned. Adios. See you tomorrow.
Through the 1812 war. James Monroe is number 5. His Monroe Doctrine still survives.
Another Adams, John Quincy, rose to the 6th presidency.
7 Andrew Jackson was a frontier common man. Number 8 Van Buren, first president born an American.
Harrison 9 passed away 1 month after inaugural day.
John Tyler, president number 10, established the White House Guardmen.
James K. Polk 11 looked to western expansion.
Taylor 12 of the Army, nicknamed Rough and Ready. 13 Fillmore in his eyes, best for all was a compromise.
14 Franklin Pierce is here, the Civil War is drawing near.
James Buchanan 15,
The one bachelor we've ever seen.
16 Lincoln Honest Abe, fought the war that freed the enslaved. 17 Andrew Johnson started Reconstruction.
18 Union General Grant had led his troops with good judgment.
19 President R.B. Hayes,
Sworn in on 2 separate days. Garfield number 20.
killed while in his presidency. Chester Arthur 21,
Sought reform and got it done. Grover Cleveland 22.
remember him 'cause he's not through. 23 Harrison comes again.
It's William's grandson, Benjamin. Grover Cleveland 24.
Ran for the White House, elected once more. Here's McKinley 25. The 20th century had arrived. Teddy Roosevelt 26. Speak softly and carry a big stick.
27 Taft we see, biggest man in the presidency.
Woodrow Wilson 28, thought a League of Nations was great. 29 Harding, post World War I, normalcy promised to everyone. progression had begun. Franklin Roosevelt, 32, with his New Deal the country grew. Harry Truman, 33, one with atomic energy.
Eisenhower, 34,
Commanded in the Second World War.
35, John Kennedy, assassinated in 63.
36, Johnson Lyndon B. He declared a war on poverty. 37, Nixon went far, opening China and the USSR.
Gerald R. Ford, 38, moved the nation forward past Watergate.
39, with all his might, Carter fought for human rights. Reagan, 40, from the West, taught the world that freedom's best.
Bush, 41, showed solid form, freed a nation in Desert Storm.
42, Bill Clinton, president through the millennium. George W. Bush, number 43, strengthened homeland security. First to be elected of African descent, Obama, our 44th president.
Donald Trump, the 45th head of state, an entrepreneur of real estate.
46, Joe Biden, here we see, now he leads